Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Across the world on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com. That's where you find the audio only live stream, links to our social media sites where we simulcast the radio show on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and of course links to the podcast as well. And as always, just on regular old terrestrial radio across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Welcome to it. It is the Michael Dukes Show, the Thursday edition of the show. And today we are jumping right into it, getting started here with our friend and cohort, Representative Ben Carpenter, who is with us via StreamYard, who's joining us here on the program this morning, and we're going to kick things off with him right away because he's got to go. He's got to drive through all this snowy stuff and make a mess today. He joins us this morning to get things started. So before we get into anything else, let's just kick off with that, shall we? Good morning, Ben. How are you doing?
Good morning, Michael. I'm doing well. How are you?
Thanks. I'm doing good. Thanks for coming on board and joining us. It's been a while since we chatted. You kind of had a pretty low key race overall. I mean, obviously not having any opponents helps with that, but I know you were focusing on other issues and helping out in some other races and everything, but we need to get a chance to kind of get caught up and figure out, do a little post-mortem here. So I appreciate you coming on board and joining us. So I guess let's get started. Overall thoughts on the election in general, in the state, in the nation. The red wave that became the pink tinkle. What are your thoughts overall on what happened nationwide and in the state and everything else?
Yeah, well, obviously, I don't have any insight other, than what other folks have had throughout the nation, and it's a surprise to everyone that thought the midterms would be a better showing for conservatives or Republicans, if you want to call them that. And it didn't for some reason. I've heard some analysis that, we've kind of got a divide amongst the population here on a social issue basis and on a financial issue basis, and the two are disconnected. They're not the same voter block,
right, as
we maybe had thought they were in the past, and that's changing the paradigm of how we're looking at elections. So, it is what it is. Now we have to move forward. We've got a divide in the House, and we're working hard to form a majority by the end of the inner period here before the first day of the session.
Yeah, it's definitely that. I think you kind of nailed that. What we're talking about, that there are groups of people out there who have the social conservatism and the fiscal conservatism don't necessarily match up in the same bodies, right? I mean, I think a lot of conservatives hold both of those beliefs dear, but out in the world, especially with younger voters and things like that, those may be two completely opposite philosophies or concepts. They may be fiscally conservative, but they're more socially liberal, or vice versa. We see that with some of the millennial population being more libertarian in their viewpoints, and we see even some people who are socially conservative who are okay with government spending. And in the state of Alaska, that's almost become the norm, because as long as you don't tax me, do whatever you want in the government as long as you don't tax me and as long as I don't see it. And take the PFD or whatever, but don't tax me, bro. As long as you do that, government could kind of do whatever it wants.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that assessment for the state of Alaska. I think the voter registration files show that party affiliation is not really a big factor. We have more independents and undeclareds in the state than we do either Republican or Democrat or some party affiliated voter. So it's definitely more anti party, if you will, and that just leads to how do you reach those folks with a message that is if they're not participating in your party process, then are you sure that your message is resonating with them? That's something that
Right.
we have to concern ourselves with as candidates.
Now you made the mention that kind of this is all in the past and we need to look forward, and I'm seeing more and more people make that commentary, and it's not just on this election, it's on past elections. Stop looking in the past, and focus on moving forward, because it's not helping us to look backwards, right? We're going to run into the wall because we're not looking to where we need to be going. And I'm hearing that from a lot of people that I read or a lot of people that I see. I think it's the truth. I think we get so focused on something that happened in the past, we get so bitter, we get so frustrated that we're like, okay, we're not paying attention to where we're going from here. We need to focus on, okay, that happened. Let's counteract and move forward. How do we go? What do we do moving forward? And of course, that applies nationally, but here in the state, especially, we can just see here what happened. We had 5 races that were very, very important in this last election here in the state of Alaska that would have given us a pretty much undisputed control of the chambers of the legislature. And we lost each and every one of them. I mean, each and every one of them just fell apart. So we analyze it, we figure out what we do. Now, what do we do going forward? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the training that I've received in the military, after every action that you do, you conduct an AAR, an after action review. You find your strengths and weaknesses and you address them, and then you move forward looking to the next battle. And that's what we have to do. The next battle for us in the state, especially the elected folks, is getting into the majority and governing for the next 2 years. That's the next battle that we have to happen. So if we're not going to be in the majority, if a legislator is making a decision that they're not going to be in the majority, then the governing piece of this is really not a big deal to them. They can hone their message and do what they need, but those who want to be in the majority need to really focus on what it's going to take to govern.
Right. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the formation of the majority. You saw what happened in the Senate. I guess first I'd like a little commentary on that. We saw apparently what has been a done deal for quite some time. Some speculation that some of this was going on as far back as August, and now we see what's happened. A coalition majority is formed in the Senate with a majority of Democrats. Overall, 9 Democrats and 8 Republicans, leaving 3 of the most conservative Republicans kind of out in the cold. Not even an official minority. And so as you saw that come down, what were you thinking? What does that do to the upcoming session with the majority that's currently been constructed in the Senate?
Michael, this is not going to make all the folks that want to prognosticate about what's going to happen happy here, but I'm not going to comment on what happened in the Senate, and I'm not going to comment on plans or what's going on with forming a majority in the House past what I've already said in kind of broad terms. This is a sensitive time. It's a time when we should not be inflaming issues and poking the other people in the eye and all of that kind of stuff, right? We are looking at moving forward. We need to be mature adults about this and form the best government that we can to move forward, given the circumstances with the election. And I think in the next, within a few weeks, maybe a month's time, we'll have some sort of organization, and then we can have conversations about what it looks like. And I'm asking for the public's help in this regard as well. It doesn't help for the circular firing squad to come out and attack your enemies and attack what you think is not good during this time period. This time period is when we need to be trying to focus on coalescing around something and moving forward. There's plenty of time during election cycles and whatnot to be critical. This is not that time. This is the time to find common ground where there is some and move forward, because that's what Alaskans require. It's what our Constitution requires. We have to form a government and we have to move out expeditiously. And what happened in the last couple legislatures with us delaying past the into February, it's nonsense. That can't happen again.
Ben Carpenter is our guest representative from down on the peninsula. Ben, so how do people go? I mean, I guess, give me a game plan for how do people support that? Because I think people, we want to kind of analyze where things are going. We kind of want to understand what's happening. We've seen the formation. We may not agree with what's going on in the formulation of the Senate majority, but we have to kind of analyze it to figure out what does it mean for the rest of the, for the formation of government. What does it mean? And then how do people support the formation of a majority in the House? If we shouldn't be, like you said, the circular firing squad doesn't help. But I mean, what should we be doing to motivate the citizenry to get involved? How should they be helping, for example, in the formation now of the House? How should we be helping with that?
I think one of the best things that you can do is reach out to your representative and make your priorities for this next legislature known if you haven't already, and then be patient. The patience is really key right now. Just trust that the process is working. Trust but verify. You can call and have personal conversations with your legislator or legislator-elect, but this the public animosity, we need to tone that down right now. That it isn't helping during negotiations or during discussions on how we're going to work together. The reality is we would like it to be different, but we are pretty much equally divided given the makeup of the House. I'm not talking about D's and R's, what letters after our name. I'm talking about people who are aligned philosophically right now, and it is pretty closely equally divided. We have to break that somehow collectively and move forward. And I can guarantee it's not going to make somebody happy out there. Well, yeah, it won't make me happy, but I still have to work through it. So give us a little bit of grace, allow us to work through this, and we're going to make the best of it that we can. And that's, anyway.
Well, I mean, I think you and I have talked about this. I mean, like you said, it doesn't necessarily matter what animal you wear on your lapel, whether it's an elephant or a donkey or a hedgehog or whatever it is. What we're seeing more is a philosophical divide over things like, the PFD or government spend or things like that. And that in and of its own nature, and I've argued this in the past, is that in and of its own self could mandate some form of coalition governance, simply because at some point you may have to jettison the party labels and look at the overall philosophy, right? I mean, are they more pro-government spend or government intervention in people's lives, or are they less, or are they pro-PFD, pro-smaller government? I mean, that almost becomes more important than party labels at some point.
Well, if my party's got 40 planks, I've got to take a huge appetite suppressant given the current conditions and say I might be able to support one of those planks. One. In a divided legislature, the nature of the beast here with who's going to control what committees and all of that stuff, right? All of what it's actually going to look like is likely to be a big humble pill on what we're actually able to achieve. And we have one responsibility, one guaranteed constitutional responsibility that we have to do, which is pass a budget. And if that's the only thing we can do on time within 90 days, then maybe that's the best that can be done this year because we're so equally divided. And the rest of the issues need to be addressed outside the legislature to produce a majority that will support change in those areas. Because if we're equally divided within the legislature, we can argue about it, but the results are going to be the same, equally divided.
Ben Carpenter's our guest, representative from down on the peninsula. I don't remember what's the new number again, Bren? Or is it 6?
I'm District 8.
District 8. 8. All right. We're going to be back with more, and we'll continue this conversation in just a moment. It is the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with more right after this.
What is that?
Common sense.
Regularly heard on American radio.
Michael Duke Show.
Radio.
All right, Ben Carpenter is our guest, and we're talking with him about legislatures, organizations, formation, and session. But we will sidebar here in the chat room during the commercial break. We'll change gears a little bit. I've already had 3 people ask about the grand jury situation up in the down in the peninsula. And so, I mean, maybe we should talk about that on the air, but give me a quick thumbnail on this, Ben, and we can revisit it once we get back on the air. What's going on with this grand jury situation down there? I know you've been following it closely.
Yeah, so we've got a constitutional requirement for a grand jury. We've got statutes that kind of shape what the grand jury, the responsibilities for the grand jury, and then you've got court rules that further tell the court how they're going to use the grand jury or enable the grand jury. And the Supreme Court recently changed Rule 6, and maybe it was 6.12, but they're both interrelated. I think they changed both of them. That determines that the grand jury doesn't have, so if the public wants to have a conversation with a grand jury, there's a way to do that. But the grand jury then doesn't have a way to issue an indictment. They only have a way to issue a report. And it kind of neuters the effect of the grand jury. So I don't think that that's constitutional. It's not supported by statute or intention of the founders when we've got an issue. Basically, the Supreme Court is punted over to the executive branch and let the attorney general and district attorneys determine when a grand jury would have something that they would issue an indictment. If an issue doesn't come down through the district attorney, then it doesn't get an indictment, and that would be neutering the power of the people to investigate all matters, like the Constitution says that they should be able to do.
Right, because that's not how it is. The grand jury is supposed to have not only the power over things that are presented to them, they are supposed to be able to impanel and be able to take on issues of oversight of government without government interfering in that, right? I mean, they're supposed to be able to review potential cases of malfeasance in government or interference or things like that. And this would essentially, and we've heard nothing about this except from you. I mean, it's not being covered in the news media. It's not being talked about, but this rule change just was kind of arbitrary and out of the blue. I mean, that really, I think your word neutering was a good word, neuters the power of the grand jury in government oversight, which is one of the prime reasons why it's actually there.
That if you read the Constitution, you read the statutes, and you investigate the founding fathers, the founders of the state, when they put this together, the grand jury, the power of the grand jury within the state, it's very clear that they were concerned about corruption within the state government, and the grand jury was the highest level of authority for investigating that type of behavior. And right now we have the slave telling the master what it can and can't do, and it just is nonsense. So it's a public education issue. More people need to be aware of why this is important, and I hope that this next year educates folks. They need to get involved on this because it's going to take a full court press to get the institutions to listen to us, we the people. It is our power that we are ceding to them if we do not demand that they recognize our constitutional right to investigate whatever the grand jury decides to investigate.
We'll expand on that here later on in the program. Less than a minute here, though, Ben. And what is the reaction, Ben, from your constituents when you were talking about, not commenting or not discussing or not strategizing or analyzing on organization. What is the reaction, Ben, from your constituency on that? Because like you said, it's going to make some people mad. What are you hearing right now as you talk about this?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not hearing a lot from anybody on organization. Who knows who really knows how to get organized out there? I mean, only the individuals who've actually gone through it. It's a messy process. There's no textbook for how you organize, especially when you're.
Yeah. All right. Well, hold the line, Ben. Thank you for stopping there. We'll be right back. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Ben Carpenter's our guest. Oops, he looks like he's frozen there. We'll see what happens. We'll see if we can get him back. Here we go. All right. Welcome back to the program. The Michael Duke Show continues. Representative Ben Carpenter is with us from District 8 down on the peninsula. We were just talking about, what a messy process the formation of a majority can be. And we'll see what comes of that. But let's move on into, you use the word prognostication, one of my favorite words. But really, it's, I ask people, put the envelope to your forehead, wear the turban, use your crystal ball, looking forward to the next session. There's going to be some issues that are going to be coming up, and they're going to be issues that are important to Alaskans, to the state, to both sides of the pro-big government, pro-small government sides. As you look at the upcoming session, what do you see being some of the critical issues that are going to come before this legislature? I mean, I think the PFD is what it's going to be because there's just not enough horsepower to move it from anywhere. I mean, we're already seeing that basically the idea is they'll pay us the biggest PFD that they think they can afford, and there's just not the votes to do what happened this last year. So, but what do you think on the other issues? What do you think are going to be the hot button issues that people need to be paying attention to? What's good, what's bad for the state in the upcoming session? Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so the issues that I think that will be a couple of them, there'll be a continued push in the legislature. One of them is the defined benefits push, growing our government subsidized, not subsidized is not the right word, but the risk on the government's side for retirement, and creating a new retirement system that's defined benefits as opposed to the current defined contributions plan for Tier 4. I think that'll be an issue. Financially, the state hasn't solved any of the underlying fundamental problems, that we don't have an economic base outside of the permanent fund to support the size of our state government, and that's a problem. We need to have policies in place, such as lowering corporate income tax rates, to be able to incentivize economic growth within our state. That's what I think is necessary in order to get economic growth happening, to incentivize economic activity. We've got to solve this problem with resource development in our state. And I know that that's not just an in-state problem. That's also a national problem with the current Biden administration. But we have got to put our foot down and start developing our resources and being competitive in the world market in regards to resources, so that we can afford to take care of our own people and be self-sufficient. We have a crisis looming at the national level with the amount of debt we have. We are going to see, I don't know how many years off it is, but we are going to see a reduction in the amount of federal dollars that are flowing into the state of Alaska. That's going to happen because of the mess that we have nationally at the federal budget level.
Right, because arithmetic doesn't lie, right? I mean, that's the bottom line.
It does not. If you put cultural issues and cultural change in one hand and you put financial change in the other, the financial, we can measure that. We know what's going to happen, what's coming up down the pipeline because of the decisions that we've made over the last couple decades. So we in Alaska need to have our resources, have more control over developing our resources and growing our economic activity for the survival of our state. We are going to be challenged with a lack of revenue coming from the federal government and a lack of revenue coming from the permanent fund, when the federal dollars start drying up all over the nation, that will have an impact on our investments within the stock market and elsewhere, on our national economy. That's what it's going to what's going to happen. So we need to be looking longer term than just this budget cycle this year, although that's important. We need to be doing some things, getting resources and getting land into the hands of people who are going to make use of it and grow our economy. That is a must. We have to do that.
That's something I've been talking about for quite some time. Is that, eventually the economics, the arithmetic of the situation is going to quote unquote fix this problem. And unfortunately, the fix is that if we don't put the brakes on it now, this train goes right off the edge of the tracks. You know what I mean? You could see the bridges out, but instead of putting the brakes on, it's like they just keep throwing the coal on it and saying it's going to be spectacular when we get there. And unfortunately, because the state is so heavily dependent on federal dollars, we will definitely feel the pinch in a lot of ways. We have got to get some sustainability and some self-reliance in our own budget process.
And one of the other issues you asked about other issues, and one of them is education. We passed a Reed's bill this last legislature, and we need to see how that's making change. Is it making positive results? We keep funding money to the education system, and we're not getting the results that we need. So we need to have a conversation, and I know that that's going to be a push this year, is to up the BSA. Well, what are we getting the results that we want for the money that we're spending? And
is there
that's the conversation that we need to have. Yeah.
Right.
And you are not going to improve the results of education in this state, this is my humble opinion, until you involve parents in a meaningful way, until you recognize that the responsibility of education is not at the school district, it's not at the school, it's not at the teacher's level, it is at the parents' level. And until you incorporate that into your system of education, the process, the system that we have is powerless to address some of the problems that we see in the classroom, which all stem from parental problems at home. So we have got to change that culturally if we're going to have any sort of results, change in results. We can't just throw money at it. We can't throw more teachers at it and add more bureaucracy at the school level, because that is not going to solve the underlying problem that we have.
Well, and until we open up and address things like, even looking at the funding formula and some of those other things, look at the lopsidedness of how much ends up going into overhead and administration versus what actually ends up in the classroom. We need to have that conversation. The most startling graph should be the one that we've been talking about for the last 10 days. And I can't remember who brought it up initially, but they said, look at go back 20 years and look at the scholastic achievements. And 20 years ago, we were in the middle of the pack in all the United States and the District of Columbia, right? All 51. We were in the middle of the pack for scholastic achievement and scores. And now you could just see that graph go down and down and down and down. And now we're in the bottom. But on the other side, the money has continued to increase over the year, even as enrollment itself has also declined. That'd be a hell of a chart, Enrollment goes down, scholastic achievement goes down, but the ever-increasing money goes up. It obviously is not more money. The more money solution is obviously not working, but that's the only mantra that we've heard for 20 years.
Yeah, I think giving parents choice over where they put their kids in school will, within a decade, help improve the school district results. The parents' choice and changing the paradigm, because right now parents just, they can send their kids off to school and wash their hands, and it's the school's responsibility. The school will say, hey, we need your help and we need you in here. We want you to participate, but it's only advice. You don't really have any responsibility or requirements to make the system work properly, right? There's no requirement there. But as soon as you create a requirement inside the school system, like a charter school has, where parents actually make the decisions of the schools, then you have parental involvement that matters to the outcome of the results of that school. So until we have that, we're not going to see a change to the culture that is really the underlying problem of education in the state.
I've been saying it for 20 years about education. Something is fundamentally broken in what we have right now. Something is fundamentally flawed. And until we address that, it doesn't matter how much money we throw at it. because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And that's where we're at. We're at that point where something is broken, and you could see, again, if you throw that graph up there, you could see more money, still less achievement. Something is wrong, and we need to address that instead of just, expediting and multiplying the problem because we're just putting more money into it.
Yeah, it's not just a Alaska state problem either. It's a problem throughout the nation. We're having a teacher shortage throughout the nation. I think people just recognize, I don't want to be a teacher in a organization that is so corrupt in this regard. We need parents to be in charge, to exercise their God-given responsibilities to educate their kids, and we need them to exercise it. So we don't have problems in homeschool communities. We don't have problems in charter school communities that have bigger parental involvement. The problem is you can't force parents to be involved. You got to change the entire culture of education within our communities, and that takes time. It takes time, and it takes deliberate actions that encourage that type of behavior. So we need more charter schools, and we need parental choice for where they send their kids.
Well, and it comes to the big question of one of the big advocacies that's been happening, especially since COVID, is this idea of what they call backpack funding, where the funding follows the student versus going, following the schools. Is that something that you think has an opportunity to be explored this session, that we could talk about, that backpack funding where each child is assigned a funding, dot, and that, it follows them versus going directly to the schools that they happen to be inside the districts of?
Well, I can speak for myself. I would love to have that conversation. I would love to get to the point where it's not just throw more money at the problem, and we're actually going to look at solutions that don't involve just throwing money. And I hope that we can. I think it all depends on who's controlling the particular committees that conversation would happen in.
Yeah, no, I think it would be an interesting conversation, if nothing else, but we should at least we should acknowledge that there is a problem. And again, to me, that one graph would show that there's something wrong, and we should address that and figure it out, if nothing else. You mentioned the defined benefits program, and of course, the devil's advocate position on that is, we've learned our lesson, and this is a very limited defined benefits. It's only going towards first responders, or it's only going towards first responders and teachers, or it's only, how much do you how dangerous do you think defined benefits, a renewal of defined benefits in this state would be? Would it be limited just to one slice or another slice, or is it the camel's nose under the tent? And we currently have I think it's still about $9 billion in unfunded liability from the first three tiers of defined benefits that were previously in this state. So how unstable does that, how bad is that? Well, I guess we'll start there.
Yeah, I don't buy it that we're going to be able to limit it to just one sector of the state workforce. I think once you get one agreement for one, then every other union is going to want it too. It's just a matter of fairness question at that point. So it's either we're going to make a decision to go back to a defined benefits program for the state retirement, or for all, or for none. And my philosophical approach to this is that we should be spending money, today's dollars, on retirement for today's employees, instead of saddling future Alaskans with the risk and the dollars for retirees during that period of time. The risk ought to be borne by the state and by the employees for the retirement. That's how it happens everywhere else. You don't have defined benefits programs in companies, corporations out in America. Small businesses don't get to offer defined benefits plans. This is the function of state government, and it's even at the federal government, they went away from defined benefits for military. You no longer have just a 20-year pension. You've got a combination of small pension and investments into their thrift savings plan. It's not a sustainable model going forward. And it just fundamentally, if you want to encourage employment or recruiting and retention, then you spend today's dollars on today's folks.
Right. Well, I mean, we've seen, Delta and GM and all the private corporations that, had defined benefits, had to be bailed out by the federal government. We've seen, as you said, the federal government's gone away from it. Many municipalities and states have gone away from it because that unfunded liability snowball just keeps going on. And as I said, correct me, we still have the unfunded liability of the previous tiers, right? It's in the billions of dollars that we're still owed this is not a small liability that we already have, and it seems like nobody is acknowledging that this would add to that.
Yeah, when we have great stock market years, that unfunded liability goes down because the investment earnings kind of close that gap. And then when we have bad stock market years, that gap grows and the unfunded liability grows. The point being that the future generations, the future taxpayers are the ones that are on the hook for that risk in investment earnings. And I think that is fundamentally a wrong thing for us to do, is to saddle future generations with that risk, that they have to increase their taxes for people who are no longer in the workforce. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
We need to put that risk on the individual, because we all share equally in the risk of the future being unknown.
Representative Ben Carpenter is our guest. We're down to the last couple of minutes here before we're going to have to let him go. Ben, your exhortation to the listeners, to the residents, to the people who are watching this, who are gnashing their teeth after this last election. What do we do? How do we, what is the next 2 years plan before the next elections? How do we encourage people to get out? Give me your thoughts on, what the next steps are. Looking forward, not just to this session, but obviously to the next election in 24, what do we need to be doing?
Well, I think if the people of Alaska want to see us return to a one person, one vote system, then they need to keep the pressure up on the legislature this year to repeal that. And if the legislature refuses to do so, then support the efforts that are going to come about, or are coming about getting this back on the ballot for the next time we come around to repeal the ranked choice voting portion of this. And I think that's really, really key, is that if you didn't like ranked choice voting, then you're going to have to stay involved. You don't just expect that it's going to happen. So that's one point. I think the second point is, if you can't, if you're unable to say that you have reached out and had conversations with the 10 neighbors around you about what is important to you politically, then that's something that you should just set a goal and be able to do that by the end of the year, that you've had those conversations. Invite them over to dinner and have those difficult conversations. We bought into the lie that we shouldn't talk about politics or religion, and we need to be better at talking about both.
Representative Ben Carpenter, our guest, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. All right, Ben, I know you got to go here in just a few minutes, so we're going to we'll try and wrap things up here for you. I think going back to the defined benefits program, that's obviously the leaky sieve. I've often likened it to triage, where somebody's got a cut femoral artery and they just we'll just keep putting IVs into their arms and pumping more fluids into them while they're bleeding out on the floor below the waist, because they haven't fixed the problem. They're addressing the symptom, but they're not fixing the problem. And I think it opens us up to, again, potential catastrophic liability. They keep saying, we've learned. But we've seen what's happened. It's more about politics than it is about arithmetic in the long run for that. And that could just exacerbate the problems that we have already with the lack of diversity, the lack of revenue, and the ever-increasing appetite for government spend.
Yeah, if we're using your analogy on somebody who's bleeding out, we aren't looking at the future generation and saying, hey, you automatically have to come in and give your platelets or your blood because these people are bleeding out. It's not on my, it's not my responsibility to deal with the past. It's my responsibility to deal with the future. And I bristle at this idea that we should be requiring additional taxation into the future at people who didn't get to vote on it, and then
Right.
just say, hey, you know what, they have a say in their legislature at that time as to whether they want to keep the policy or not. No, because this no diminishing what is it? The retirement can't be diminished into the future. Once you're in that system, you're in that system until you die, and
Right.
that's not a. We just need to not start it again.
Right. Well,
Today's dollars for today's employees. That's what it needs to be.
right. It's a contract with Alaska or contract on Alaska because, again, you're indebting and basically binding anybody today and future residents to whatever you decide today for the next, fill out the blank 20 years for whoever's currently in the system right now. If they all of a sudden become part of that defined benefit, we're on the hook for 20 years, regardless of what we want or whatever the fiscal situation is. Fiscal situation could change and turn right to hell in the state of Alaska, and it wouldn't matter. That's still the number one priority because we've agreed to it. And opening up that Pandora's box, I think, is very, very dangerous to say the least. For what we have going on. And you talked about you've mentioned it several times, the long-term vision. And that is really, I think, one of the key problems in this state is that we lack a significant we lack long-term vision. It's always like this next budget or maybe 2 budgets from now. But even when the governor puts out a 10-year, vision or 10-year plan, none of that's it's like, oh, that's nice. And then they move back on to what are we doing this year, next year? No, it's always to the next election cycle or the next budget. There's not a lot of long-term planning in this state, it seems like to me, from the outside looking in.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. And some of that comes down to individual, I don't know, I don't want to, be disparaging of people, but comes down to individual choice on what you prioritize in your life. And if you don't have your own long-term plan about where you think you're going in the future, then why would you care what happens with the state? I mean, that's fundamentally, that's maybe what we're
Right.
up against is a little bit of apathy in the public. But it is really important that we say to ourselves, where do we want the state of Alaska to be in 10, 20 years? What do we want to turn over to the next generation? Do we want an economy that's just on limping along on oil when the entire world is going against oil production right now?
Right.
Do we want that, or do we want to figure out what do we have resource wise that gives us an opportunity to pass on a better state to the next generation and pool our resources to make that happen? I know the governor is doing a good effort at fighting back against a federal overreach, and that is something that must happen. And maybe that's one thing that people ought to be doing this next year is reaching out to their U.S. delegation and making it very clear that Alaska needs to be able to develop its own resources for its own economic benefit. It's what we were promised at statehood, and the federal government is preventing us from doing that.
Ben Carpenter, our guest. Ben, we're down to the last minute before we return to radio. You have to go, right? Or are you staying with us to the top?
No, I've got to leave here very shortly.
Okay. All right. Well, Ben, thank you for coming on board and joining us. I appreciate it. Are you doing anything, any town halls, meet and greets or anything before the session, or what's going on quickly here?
No, I don't, but I am very busy in organization. So that's kind of my focus right now.
Okay. Focus is organization. Fingers crossed we can get control of one. I mean, the best case scenario is kind of gridlock between the Senate and the House, and then the governor gets to do some veto stuff on top of that. So hopefully we see that come along. Representative Ben Carpenter, thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. If I don't see you before Christmas, Merry Christmas.
You're welcome. The governor's budget comes out here very soon, and we'll obviously be on top of that.
All right. Thank you for coming on board, Ben. We appreciate you being part of it today.
Thanks, Michael. It's always a pleasure.
All right, we're jumping back into it, folks. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. All right. Thank you to Ben Carpenter for being part of the program here this morning and giving us his insight. Interesting that, I'm seeing more and more of this, and maybe it's the right play. But even amongst, senators, like we had Mike Shower on yesterday, where, we could talk a little bit about it, but we weren't naming names per se. And now Ben Carpenter saying, he's not going to tackle that bull by the horns during the organizational process in an attempt to not antagonize folks that he may have to work with in forming this majority or the organization. And I think that's interesting because it basically means that, our side is, walking softly because, these are folks that they're going to have to work with. And obviously what they've been doing in the past, and I'm thinking specifically here of Shower on this, but he's obviously irritated some people by calling out their actions. Now, we've never cast aspersions on, the character, the motive, or anything else. It's always about the action. I do mock occasionally certain characteristics or people, but again, I think that in their own hearts and their own minds, these people think that what they're doing is the right thing, right? I'm not never saying that somebody is evil or they they're trying to accumulate power directly. I think a lot of these people in their heart of hearts look themselves in the mirror and goes, "This is the right thing to do." I just disagree with it. But it seems like more and more, and again, this comes back from that kind of shocking revelation from this last election where I knew things were kind of turning purple in the state, but I thought still that there was a majority of, more smaller government, less spend conservatives. And I'm coming to the conclusion that either A, no, we're just strictly in the minority and more people in Alaska would rather the government continue to grow and spend money. Or B, those of us who, those who are similar to us that believe that smaller, more limited government is important and a smaller government spend is important, that they're just not involved. Or they've thrown their hands up and they've walked off the field and they're like, nope, not going to participate anymore. So it's either one of those two things. Quite honestly, I can't decide which one is the worst potential. I guess I would say that if it's the latter, if it's just that people who identify in this or philosophically aligned with us in the smaller government side, if they have just thrown up their hands and walked off the field, well, at least there's a potential to bring them back. Right? There's a potential that we could somehow convince them to rejoin the fight. If it's the other one, if it's the first one, if it's just that, no, we have just now become a strong minority and that the vast majority of Alaskans are like, do whatever you want. If government wants to spend money, spend money. I like them that government lucre. I like them services. I like first of all, I think it's an educational issue, right? But I think that scenario, if it's the first and we're just a flat minority, that's going to make it a much harder fight. Now, some of that is simply education. And this goes back to what I've said in the past about, Alaska, that we are being stealth taxed, right? Stealth and not so stealth, but the tax is almost unfelt. It's unseen. It's unheard of. It's like I've always talked about the evil of withholding taxes. I love Milton Friedman, don't get me wrong, but I think he was so wrong on this because what happens is people just don't, you get your pay and you didn't notice the taxes maybe you did, but it was like, well, it's just, I can't control it, taxes. Whereas if you got your full pay all year long and you had to write that check to the federal government every year, there would be some outrage, right? And that's what we're seeing here in the state of Alaska. They're providing us with all these services, quote unquote, and the way they're being paid for is all that money is going straight into the government coffers right out of the bat. We never even see it. It never touches us. It never affects us. And so we're like, well, I mean, fine, I didn't feel it. I mean, what government services do I use? Well, I can't really name any, but government services are important. And since I don't pay for it because I don't see it, then that's fine. And this go hand in hand with what I was talking about earlier this week, which was the aversion to tax. We're so tax adverse. Oh, do anything you want, but don't tax me, bro. And that's how government has grown and, continues to grow out of control. Is because we don't see the money. We don't feel it come out of our pocketbook. Again, if you wanted to see a revolution in this state, and I'm not talking about like a civil war, I'm just talking about an eye-opening, complete sea change in this state, instead of giving the money for the royalty oil, et cetera, straight to the government and allowing it to go straight into their coffers, because that's 75% of that royalty money just goes straight into the government's, goes straight into the general fund to spend however they want. Instead of that, if they issued a check equally to every citizen in the state of Alaska, let's say that everybody who filed for a dividend got the royalty check, and you would get a check for, $16,000, $17,000, $18,000 per man, woman, and child in your household, and you'd be like, yay. And then the next day you received the bill in the mail from the state of Alaska for the cost of state government, because now they have to tax you directly. The money, they don't get first crack at the money. It goes to you, and then they get to take it back from you. And you figured out that out of that $18,000 check, you had to write the government a check for $17,000. People will start asking questions like, what services am I getting that are worth, $1,500 a month to me? What services am I getting or using that it's costing me $17,000 and my family? It's costing my family of four. It's costing us, $70,000 a year for my family. Am I using $70,000? Is my family using $70,000? No. I mean, there would be you would hear the screeching halt from Florida in what was going on inside the state of Alaska. Because you see, most people don't understand in the state. They don't know what their government costs. They don't know what the actual expenditure is. And what's more, they don't care because, again, they don't see it. People started to see it when they started taxing the PFD, again, more kind of a withholding tax than anything else. But they also, again, are not taking it to its logical conclusion of, oh, my PFD is supposed to be, $3,900 and I got $1,000. Oh, I'm glad I got the $1,000. Yeah, but what about the other $2,800? What about that? I think that it's going to be an educational process to explain to people what the cost of government is. And until we do that, people they have no idea at all. We're going to open up the phone lines in hour two. Okay. I don't know, man. I mean, I'm obviously I'm a little frustrated. And here's Randy. Diverting all the state revenue into pockets of people who didn't earn it would create a massive population of bums and a massive state income tax on those few who are still working for a living. You're missing my point, Randy. As always. It's sometimes I wonder if it's willful blindness. You're missing my point. I'm saying if all that money flowed into the people's hands, if you got a check for $18,000, Randy, and then the next day you got a bill for $17,000 for your share of state services that you supposedly consume, would you be more or less motivated to see the size and scope of government grow or shrink? Right? I mean, you're missing the whole point. And by the way, then you'd be taxed on all that money that you got in, and I mean, yeah. I mean, that's never going to happen because the politicians first of all, it would be, mechanically, it would be a heavy lift to have to pay everybody tens of thousands of dollars and then tax them back. You'd have to create a whole new department and yada, yada, yada. But, I mean, the powers that be in the legend would never allow that because then the curtain would be drawn back and you'd see the guy pulling all the levers. You would understand that your government is costing more than any other government in the country on a per capita basis, and you'd be asking why. Well, because they get the money first. The money goes straight to them. I mean, I've often wondered if it wouldn't just be better just to have a tax so that people at least understood what the cost of government is, because right now it's all going on behind the scenes. It's all stealthily happening and nobody's paying attention. They're all fat, dumb, and happy. Like, oh, okay, whatever. Do whatever you want. Just don't tax me, bro. Do whatever you want. Just don't, no. But I guess that's just me. So we can talk about this and see what you have to say on it. We'll get your thoughts and your feels on this as we continue. I guess I should. I didn't have the phones turned on, so I guess I'll turn the phones on. First things first, and we'll see where we go from here. Come on, join. There we go. All right, and click. Yeah. That gentleman who defeated Tuckerman is a turncoat right off the bat. So no whining from the peninsula. Okay. I mean, they can whine all they want. Look, I mean, there are plenty of people. I'm looking at you, Harold. Plenty of people who prove positive that whining is a universal right. Anybody can whine. I whine all the time. I bitch and moan about stuff all the time. But, it is shocking to see a lot of this stuff happening right now. Okay. Let me make sure I've got everything squared away here. This is, man, I rebooted everything before the show started this morning, including my router, and it's still challenging it's still slow, a little slow. Come on, people. I haven't set up my Starlink yet because I don't want to switch everything over to something that's still iffy, but we'll see what's going on.
All participants are muted.
Hey, look at that. The phone lines are up and working. Okay. So phone lines are up. Coming up on the show tomorrow, Jeff Knox is going to be joining us from the Firearms Coalition. We're going to be talking about the gun-free zones, especially the Walmart situation here recently, where the employee went in there and killed a bunch of folks. And we were going to have Chris Chang, but Chris Chang he just sent me a text yesterday and said he forgot to tell me he's on vacation in South America. So must be nice. He's on vacation, and so we will see him in January. So it'll be only Jeff Knox and Willie Waffle tomorrow. That's the plan. Anyway, we'll see what goes on from there. What's your plan for the weekend? Shoveling the whole weekend? I actually paid my neighbor money to come over with his snowblower because my kids were trying to sling that snow out of the driveway. No, I mean, it was so wet and heavy and everything else. And I slipped him a couple dollars and said, when you're done with yours, would you just come over to mine and cut? And then I got stuck at the bottom of my own driveway. It was, what a hot mess. What a hot mess. I've been driving around fine on these tires on my car. They're not great tires. The new car came with all season, whatever. They're not Blizzaks, I'll tell you that for nothing. My other Mini Cooper, I could go anywhere. I pushed 6 inches of snow one time going into Anchorage in it. It was fine. These tires, no bueno. So I need to wear them out and get me some Blizzaks here pretty quick. All right. Well, we're coming up on it. We're about a minute out, and you guys have been super quiet this morning. Well, I mean, not all of you. There's been a few of you said a few things, but are you guys ready? I mean, should we keep going on politics, or should we change things and just go to fun stuff in the next hour? I mean, I'm all good with it. I'm okay with it. Whatever you want, Yeah, I'll know what you want to do. All right, let's get back to it. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, Free thinking radio. Like and share. It was a cold. You're right. It's not a hot mess. It's a cold mess. Although it was warm mess because that's when it gets bad. Now, the temperature starts to drop. It's 10 degrees. A lot easier to drive than at 30 degrees. Just because. Let's do fun stuff. Nobody wants to talk about politics anymore. Me either. The Michael Duke Show.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing picture. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
I got to turn it up. I got to push the button across the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. It is the Michael Duke Show. Good morning. Good Thursday morning. Hey, I didn't do a Christmas countdown. So 10 plus that is 17 days. 16 days until Christmas Eve. 16 days until Christmas Eve. You got your Christmas shopping done? I've still got one or two things I'm waiting on. I think they're coming. I'm thinking about that. Then you got to go do the stocking stuffers. You got to get the chocolate. You got to get the bath bombs for the wife and the daughters. You got to get, there's still a few things I got to get, but I'm pretty much covered, I think, for most of it. I think that'll be fine. But 16 days, baby. 16 days until Christmas Eve. So I hope you're ready. I hope you've got it all done. I took a poll in the chat room before we came back from the break. I am just I'm about politicked out right now. I mean, and this thing with Ben is I'm right. I mean, we could rehash this over and over and over again, but maybe we should just let him organize and then we can figure out where we go from there. Maybe we should just cover some good news, or maybe we should just take some phone calls. 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150, powered by our friends at Satellite West. Phone calls. Maybe we'll take some phone calls and see where you lead us. And maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe we'll let you drive the bus as far as talking about certain things. We could just talk about what we were, whatever. And then in the meanwhile, I'll fill it out with some news stories and some good news and some just chat about fun stuff and some of the things that I'm reading. We'll figure it out. Let's go over to the phones. How about that? First things first. We'll see what you guys have to say. So I got one line on hold and a bunch of lines open. 907-433-3150. Let's go over here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Morning, Michael. Greg down in Homer.
Hello, Greg. What's happening, my friend, down there in God's land?
Well, it's clear and 24 degrees, 25 degrees. Pretty nice. We got zero snow out of that storm.
Oh, you guys lucked out. I got all your snow on top of my own, so it's all good.
Yeah, we got a bunch coming this weekend. We're supposed to get hit for the next 10 or 12 days. So
yeah,
we'll wait for Sunday morning to see what it brings.
Right.
Anyway, I just called to be devil's advocate here for a minute.
Okay.
So with all this stuff going on in our state, it's a total train wreck anyway. What if we just let them wreck the train? Let the state go bankrupt. and restart with a smaller government.
I mean, that I have considered that thought occasionally. I have just considered that thought. I mean, I've kind of taken that approach to the national government because we can't really affect very much of it. And it's like, well, it's going to eventually, like I said, the train tracks are out, and you could either put the handbrake on the train to slow it down, or you could just pour the coal to it and say, hold my beer. This is going to be spectacular. And I think I've fallen into the latter camp on the national stuff. I mean, it's going to be what it's going to be. It's going to crash because there's no appetite to stop anything. So all we can do is prepare our own houses for, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And maybe we need to take that tact with the state as well. I don't know, Greg. You might be right. I mean, but I guess the question is, do we just throw our hands up in the air and turn our backs on it and watch it explode, or do we keep fighting, or what? I mean, what do you think?
Well, in my humble opinion is we're fighting hard, and the problem is we've lost half our troops because at 40% voter turnout, that's 60% of the troops are gone.
Yeah,
we're kind of chasing our own tail here, and I mean, I'm not going to quit fighting, but I'm at the point. It's like, you know what? Run this baby off the tracks. Let's start over, because we ain't fixing what's being broke. It's just getting worse.
So I guess this goes back to my suggestion the other day that we pull a full 180 and just start advocating for, give us an income tax and do this and do that. I mean, should we just flip 180 and just stress the system until it explodes and then pick up the pieces? I mean, I'm laughing, but I just don't know.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, I just don't know.
At the point, I would not cry about, say, a 2 to 3% flat tax with a sunset clause on it. So when they get their act together and they trim things a little bit, or a lot in our case, then they can sunset it out.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike Scheller had some charts here last year that were pretty impressive, and I like where he was headed with them. And I hate like have to pay more tax, but currently their taxing is so heavy on the PFD, 2% wouldn't be anything.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, you get a family of 2 or 3 or 4, and you look at that versus, say, a 3% overall flat tax. Yeah, I mean, it starts to look pretty attractive. Not to mention, as I was talking about earlier, the stealth taxation of all the money going straight into the state and people just not paying attention, Greg. I mean, have you ever had a conversation with somebody about the state government, and have you ever dropped that nugget of, they spend $14,000-$15,000 per person in the state on state government? Have you ever dropped that on somebody and watched their eyes widen?
Yeah, the problem is their eyes widen and immediately glaze over.
That's true. I mean, it's you're right.
It's like talking to a wall. No, gone. You think you're going to get them, and then they fade away, and it's sad. We've been fighting up here for a lot of years, and if you look at the conservative side, we are slowly losing the war.
Yeah, no,
and it's depressing.
Well, I think that was, again, my acknowledgement coming out of this last election, is that I think that we are in the minority, maybe not in the minority of actual population, but in the voting population, we've become the minority, and that's disheartening to say the least.
Well, so if you take that, say, 40%. Our side is producing about 18%. It's tight, but if we don't get the conservative people to get out and participate and vote and move, I mean, our elections went way left, and you look at the big elections in the lower 48, they went way left, and the Democrats literally, or the leftist side, literally spent 3 to 4 to 1 financially against us.
Yeah.
We don't have the money to keep up.
Yeah. Well, look at what happened with the Constitutional Convention question. They were outspent 100 to 1. I mean, 100 to 1. How do you compete with that? How do you do it? I mean, I don't know, Greg. I don't know what the answer is, and I hate to give up. I'm just not one to give up. But at the same time, I have, like I said, I've kind of embraced that philosophy on the national level. That's why I don't usually cover national politics, because we can't make an effect, and it's kind of bred in circuses, and it doesn't matter because both the Democrats and the Republicans have no appetite to curb the spend, and it's eventually going to hit the wall. And then what are we going to do, right? So I'm just like, well, let it crash. We'll have to be. How do you unpickle a pickle? You don't. You throw it on the ground, you crush it under your heel, and you crush it under your heel, and you go get a new cucumber. That's what you do. And maybe that's what has to happen here. All right, Greg. Thank you for calling in, my friend.
I'll go right along with you. If we need to go support flat tax, I'm all over it. So you have a great day, Michael.
Thanks.
Be careful in the snow.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your call. 907-433-3150. I don't know if that's what we need to do. I don't know if we need to, but maybe it accelerates the inevitable end, or maybe it wakes people up. I don't know. I mean, I'm casting around looking for everything, because what we're doing is not working. Over here we go. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
My name's Christine, and I live in the land of Jesse Bjorkman.
Jesse Bjorkman's land down on the peninsula. What's going on, Christine?
Yeah. My question for you today is, do we think now that Whitney Griner is back on sacred U.S. soil, that she will be any more loving of this country than she was of her Russian work camp? Today, she is home, back with us to vilify the United States.
Right. For those of you who don't know who Whitney Griner is, she's the WNBA basketball star that was playing some exhibition game in Russia and got arrested for drug possession and got put in a gulag, and looked like she was going to spend the next 9 or 10 years there. And apparently this morning, in a surprise announcement, the U.S. announced that they had traded her for a known arms dealer that they had in prison that the Russians wanted back. And so they traded her, and she's coming back to U.S. soil. And she was vehemently kind of, I hate this country, but I mean, I'm willing to make hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, but I hate this country. We'll see if she changes her tune, if she comes back and kisses the ground on American soil or not. We'll see what happens with that, Christine. But yeah, I mean, shocking, not really, but.
And I do have one other question. Do the people in the audience know what critical mass means?
Critical mass?
It's just a
yeah. I mean, I know what I know.
Does anybody understand what that means?
I mean, I know.
Anyway, those are my questions.
Yeah,
and I'll hang up and listen to the answer.
All right. Well, thank you, Christine. I mean, I know what critical mass means. It's when something gains enough momentum that it is inexorable, that it's going to reach its logical conclusion. Again, our train scenario. When the train reaches critical mass, it means that no matter how much you apply the brakes, it's still going to go off the end of the bridge that's broken, right? I mean, when something reaches that critical mass phase, it's inevitable that the foreseen outcome is going to happen. I don't know if Christine is asking if we have reached the critical mass in the U.S. or here in the state of Alaska or what, but potentially. I mean, potentially we may have reached that tipping, it's also critical. Tipping point is another way of saying the tipping point. You've gone over the tipping point, or, it's the point of no return is another way to say it, and it's the go, no-go point for pilots, when you reach a certain point where you'll have enough fuel to get back until you reach that no-go point, no-go point. And when you're gone beyond it, you don't have enough fuel to get back. So you're going to have to sit down somewhere else. That's kind of what the whole idea of critical mass is. And maybe, have we reached it? In the country, I think we have. In the United States, nationally. I mean, we're talking about almost $41 trillion in debt. The unfunded liabilities, we don't even talk about, but they are well in excess of $150 trillion in unfunded liabilities on that debt. So now you're talking about $200 trillion in debt and unfunded liabilities. How are you ever going to, I think it's inevitable at this point. I mean, the critical mass is definitely on board with that. Now, here in the state of Alaska, have we reached that point? Well, if not, I think we can I think we could see it from here. If we haven't reached that point, we can definitely probably shade our eyes and look out over the horizon and know that it's coming somewhere in the future. All right. Well, the phone lines are still open. And maybe we'll do some fun stuff on the other side. We'll see what happens. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We continue with more, your phone calls, and everything else right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Yeah. Not enough wealth on the planet to take care of our debt and unfunded liabilities. Been pointing that out forever. Unfunded liabilities, but everyone just gets the national debt. This is 40. It's close to 40. Let me go do us. Maybe I'm looking into the future. U.S. debt clock. What's the current? Here we go. Real time. What's the real-time national debt clock look like? Hit me with it, baby. Give me the bad news. You're right. I'm sorry. 31, not 40. 31 trillion in debt. 31 trillion in debt with only 4 trillion of U.S. federal tax revenue. And the federal spending is officially at almost $6 trillion. So they add another $1 trillion to the debt every year. Ooh, baby. What's the time machine say? Give me the 2026. What's the U.S. debt for 2026 say? Oh, yeah. Hey, 2020. That must have been where I got the number. 2026. That's the farthest out that the debt clock goes. Says $41 trillion, almost $42 trillion in debt in 3 years, 4 years. So yeah, there's always that. Okay. Care Cliff threw something out there that I thought was is I thought actually pretty relevant and pretty thick. She says the Republicans deserve to lose. Care is a libertarian. Okay. So, she's like, the Republicans deserve to lose. They are way too concerned about legislating morality instead of protecting inherent individuals' rights to be sinners. I don't disagree with that. I mean, because we talk about compulsion by government, right? I mean, that's been the whole thing on this, this U.S. Supreme Court case on the website developer in Colorado and the cake baker in Colorado and all this stuff, going on, that now we're talking about not just protecting, we're talking about the government compelling people to do certain things. And that is, that is problematic. State censorship is bad, but compulsion is just as bad. When you are compelled to do something that is inherently contrary to your personal beliefs by the government, that's just as bad, if not worse, than censorship. Censorship is one thing because information will always, you can never stop the signal, right? You can't stop the signal. So censorship is one thing, but compulsion by government to do something that is, against your personal beliefs, religious, philosophical, whatever, those are wrong. And even if it's for their own good, even if you're doing something, you're trying to enforce or legislate morality at the point of a government gun, that doesn't make it right. I may even agree with the moral stand that you're trying to take, but I totally and vehemently disagree that it should be done at the point of a government gun. People need to be free to make, that's what free will is about. As long as you're not hurting others, you should be able to do anything you want. This is something that people have had a hard time with, that I've said this for years. People should be able to do whatever they want as long as it doesn't hurt somebody else or infringe on somebody else's rights. I mean, you want to smoke bath salts and take heroin, you want to marry your toaster, you want to be part of a polygamist cult. I don't care. Are you hurting anybody else? No. Not my job, man. Now, I can tell you what I believe and why I believe you should change what you're doing, but it's not the government's position to get involved in that. And unfortunately, that seems to be the case everywhere. All right, we got to get back into it. Let's jump in. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share, and follow. Okay. Welcome back to the program. The Michael Duke Show continues. We've had some interesting conversations in the chat room here during the break, and a couple interesting comments. I was wrong. It wasn't 40. I read an article the other day about the debt, and I was quoting the 40 trillion number is actually for 3 years from now. Sorry. We're at 31 trillion right now. The U.S. debt clock is projecting that by 2026 we'll be at 41 trillion and adding $1 to $1.5 trillion a year to the debt, because that's the deficit every year. So again, train, brake handle on one side, coal box on the other. Just keep shoveling the coal in. That's where we're going right now. Just keep shoveling. Just keep shoveling. Just keep shoveling. I mean, it's going to be spectacular. There was also a comment in the chat room, which I'm going to requote now because I think it's important. I mean, we'll get into some fun stuff. I got some good news we're going to get to in the next segment. Okay. So I know when I said before the top of the hour, I'd be like, what do you guys want to do? You want to keep going on politics, or you want to talk about fun stuff? And it was like, fun stuff. A bunch of people. We're going to get to some fun stuff. But there again, this conversation is happening in real time. So we've got these conversations. Care is in the chat room. Care is a libertarian friend of mine. And here's what she says. She says, the Republicans deserved to lose. They are way too concerned with legislating morality instead of protecting inherent individuals' rights to be sinners. And I got to say that I don't disagree with that. Now, I know it's our Christian duty to extol the gospels and tell people, hey, and I believe that. Now, I'm not a evangelical. I don't, I'm not throwing that out there at every minute. I tell people what I believe, and I tell people why I believe that what I believe is right. So if somebody is, doing something that I don't agree with, I don't slap them in the chest with a Bible and say, get good. I say, well, this is what I believe. I believe people should have the right. This is what free will is about, right? Free will is about, doing what you decide to do. And that's why as a libertarian, I've always embraced the ideal of, kind of do no harm, don't hurt people, don't take their stuff, the non-aggression principle, essentially breaking it down to you should be able to do whatever you want to do as long as you don't hurt anyone else. So, you want to shoot up heroin, you want to smoke bath salts, you want to marry your toaster, you want to become part of a polyamorous cult or polygamy. I mean, fine. Are you hurting anybody? I mean, is everybody, as long as you're not hurting anybody, it should not be government's job to enforce morality at the point of a gun. You know, we've been talking about this Supreme Court case that's going on right now with the website designer in Colorado. Why is it always Colorado? It was the cake baker in Colorado, and now it's the website designer. This court case is to say whether or not she should be forced to create websites for same-sex marriage couples. Now, again, if you want to marry, you know, if you want to marry same-sex, if you want to do that, you want to marry, again, in Japan, they got guys marrying AI, avatars, digital. Some people married their sex bots or whatever. If you want to do that, hey, that's weird. I think it's weird and wrong, but who am I? I don't have to stand in front of the seat and say, this is what I did. Right? The idea that you have state censorship on one hand, and on the opposite hand, you've got state compulsion. State censorship is horrible, right? But state censorship is really the lesser of those evils. Because with censorship, I mean, let's face it, as I said, once the genie's out of the bottle, there's a black market. You can't stop the signal. Censorship is bad. Don't get me wrong. But compulsion by the state to do something that you are morally, religiously, or philosophically opposed to, that is worse. And that's what we're talking about here. Compulsion by the state, the government, to do something that you are absolutely morally opposed to. And that's what they're discussing right now. Whether or not they are going to compel this woman, this web designer, to create same-sex marriage websites or have the government just completely put her out of business. Those are your choices. So that's actually the opposite of enforcing morality, right? I mean, what Kerr was talking about. On the other hand, I don't think the government should have any business, in interpersonal relationships or telling people. Here's the thing when it comes to the marriage thing, and I've often asked this. Why should I even ask the government for permission to marry somebody? Marriage is a contract between two people. Or apparently 3 or 5 or whatever. But a marriage is a contract. The government should have why am I going hat in hand to the government and saying, please, please, can I marry the person I love? What business is it of the government? Am I wrong? Right? This is what's happening. Government should not be legislating morality because the government itself has no morals. And legislating morality at the point of a gun, at the barrel of a gun, is not true morality anyway. People have to be judged on their own merits and what they do. That's what free will is about. And again, I'm not talking about somebody doing something that hurts other people. There's obviously rules and laws for that. I'm talking about leaving people be. Now, that doesn't mean you can't tell them you think they're wrong. Doesn't mean that people in the public square can't tell the cake baker or the website designer that you're wrong. Doesn't mean that they can't publicly shame them. Doesn't mean that they can't do all that stuff. But to have the government come in and compel you through threat of force and violence, that's what that is, by the way. Force and violence. Because if she keeps doing what she's doing and the government says, no, we've shut you down, and she keeps doing it, then guys with guns will show up at their door and arrest her and put her in a cage. That's one of the framers. Was it Washington? Or government is force. It is violence. That's what government is. In its base, if you boil it down to its base nature, that's what it is. Wow, we got a little deep there. Let's go over to the phones and see what you guys have to say. Do you agree with me or you disagree with me? I'm curious. Over here. Good morning. Who is this? Where are you calling from?
Morning, Michael. This is Bubba from North Pole. And yes, I do agree with you. I do. People want to. You can't stop people from doing wrong if that's what they're going to do. But two things really quick. I have started a new job. I started at 9, so I missed your whole first hour. I'm not getting up, but I missed that. Anyhow, two things really quick. Number one, who is the third person? Mike Showers, Sarah Vance, and who's the third one that wouldn't get into the caucus?
No, it was Mike Shower. It was Mike Shower, Shelley Hughes, and Rob Meyer. Sarah Vance is in the House.
Oh,
so,
great.
Yeah. So it's
Shelley Hughes down in the Kenai, in Homer, Kenai area. Yeah, great.
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear Rob Meyer's name.
Yeah, Rob Meyer's from Fairbanks, and then Mike Shower and Shelley Hughes from the Mat-Su. Those are the three senators that got edged out.
Good on them. And I've supported all three of them financially. And here's the other one really quick. I just heard this last night. Biden President 2024. It's a no-brainer.
Oh God!
Bumper sticker.
That's right.
We can make money on that.
That's a bumper sticker right there. Yep. All right. Thanks for calling in. I appreciate you being part of it today. Phone lines are open, as you can hear, at 907-433-3150. 907-433-3150. So, I mean, what do you think? Am I wrong? Because, I mean, you're right. Whether it's censorship or compulsion, both of those are bad on government side. And we've seen both of those things come from both sides of the political aisle. We've seen compulsion and censorship on both sides of the aisle. That's, that's part of the problem. So I get your take on that as well. Coming up on tomorrow's program, just FYI, for those of you who are looking around for what's happening tomorrow, it is Firearms Friday, your chance to sound off on issues of a two-way nature. We're going to be talking tomorrow in hour 1 with Jeff Knox from the Firearms Coalition. He, of course, is the son of Neil Knox of NRA fame and some of the early NRA scandals and things like that. We're going to talk with him about gun-free zones. He wrote an article here recently for AmmoLand that talked about the gun-free zones and Walmart specifically, the latest attack from the employee at Walmart. And we're gonna talk about that and discuss that. It's been a while since we've had Jeff on the program. And then we normally have Chris Chang on the second Friday of every month, but he texted me yesterday and said, "Hey, I forgot to tell you that I'm on vacation in South America and I won't be back. I won't be." So we're gonna see Chris Chang come up in January, but we will have Willie Waffle. He will be finishing up the program with us tomorrow for some. He even said something in his email about some non-Christmas movies, which I find hard to believe because, I mean, it's all about Christmas. Shouldn't we be watching all the Christmas movies? As long as I don't have to hear Mariah Carey sing, I'm okay with that. I mean, I am okay with that. So tomorrow, Jeff Knox, Willie Waffle, and all the firearm discussion goodness that you could possibly want going on Firearms Friday. Another quick reminder that as of, I know we're still however many days out we are from it right now, but I will remind you that on December the 21st, which is just under 2 weeks from yesterday, that will be my final broadcast for 2022. I will be going on vacation starting the next morning. So Wednesday will be my last day, Wednesday the 21st, and we will be in alternate programming until the 2nd of January, which is Monday, the first day of the new year, the first work day of the new year. So I'll be off the air for 12 days or so. And maybe one of these days we'll figure out a way to get best ofs or some of these other things up. But, again, this is a low budget radio show. I mean, it is what it is. And my studio is in my house. So it's not like I'm inviting a guest host to come over and fill in for me. So we could talk about that. Maybe, maybe we could talk Chris Story into doing the show for 12 days. We'll see. He owes me. We'll see what we can do. Maybe we'll get that done. Maybe we can get him to fill in that week between Christmas and New Year's. Maybe we could do that. Anyway, it'll be fun stuff. We'll figure it all out. Okay, well, you know what? We're up at the break, so I guess we will. I guess we'll take that, and we'll come back with one final segment where we have some good news and some discussions of fun stuff. Maybe. I guess we're done with politics. Nobody else is calling in disagreeing with me, so apparently everyone agrees with me on all my discussions of censorship and compulsion and leaving people be. You all must agree with me, I guess. We're going to be back. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Maybe God's a libertarian. That's a joke there for the woke. Thank you, Laura, for making my day with that one. Maybe God is a libertarian. I mean, he wants everybody to do the right thing. He gave them the path to do the right thing, but he gave them free will. Do whatever you want to do, as long as you don't, hurt anybody else. That's, that's how I surge with folks now. That's how I don't know if the word surge is what you were looking for. That's how I surge with folks now, says Michael. I just pull up the debt clock and ask them, how does this work? Usually I get the answer, it just does, from the moronic bunch. The more intelligent ones say, that's scary. It is scary. It is scary. Just Google U.S. debt clock and go look at it. 31 trillion this year, 2026, 41 trillion. With $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion in debt added every year. Ooh, baby. Colorado, the new California. Love one another, do unto others as you would have done to you. Jesus is pretty much clear on that. Yep. You forgot worshiping the spaghetti monster. If they want to worship, Bill, if they want to worship the spaghetti monster, fine. If they want to celebrate Ranahana Kwanzmas, okay. The Festivus, so, what? Okay. Whatever. If you want to believe that you were a space seed that was planted on Earth from whatever. Who am I to, I believe one thing, you believe something else. One of us has got it right? And, I'd be an atheist, but I just ain't got that kind of faith. I've said that to people before. They're like, I'd be an atheist, but I just don't have that kind of faith. What do you mean? Well, if you're right, if I'm right, then, everything's good. I'm going to try and do my best to get into heaven and everything else. But if you're right as an atheist and I'm, man, they don't make an asbestos suit thick enough to make sure you're going to, hang out in the lake of fire for all eternity. I just don't have the kind of faith that there is no God. I believe that there is. I've seen too many things. I've been part of too many things. But if you want to believe that, hallelujah. Just do it to it, baby. Do it to it. The problem is that the people that have the morals you're talking about embrace state force to make you accept what they do as normal. I don't care what other people do as long as they don't interfere with my rights and my tax money. Right. Well, and that's what the left does, right? The right may say, enforce, they embrace the state to force you to do what they think is right. The left uses the state to embrace and enforce what they believe is, whether it's, normalizing homosexuality or whatever all these other things are. They do the same thing. So it's all state force. It's all coercion and compulsion. Would you just stop? Let people be who they are, what they're doing. Chris Byer says, I need 5 wives. man, there's something wrong. Are you even married? Because, I mean, one is enough for me. I love her to death. She is the joy and pride of my life. But 4 more? No. No. I mean, I look at these guys who are bigamists and have like, I've got 3 wives or 4 wives, and I'm like, oh my God. Wow. I'm just like, I don't know. How, I mean, how? I mean, wow. So Timothy says, so that's an interesting point. Devil's advocates say, why not have that viewpoint on abortion? I don't know which point he was making specifically, but again, abortion violates the non-aggression principle, in my opinion, because that baby is a person. And so whether, it's inconvenient for you or not is irrelevant because it's another person. And that's where we get off the rails between libertarians, because most libertarians are pro-abortion or pro-choice, I guess. They would not pro-abortion, whatever, however they say it. Because, well, it's her body. She should be able to do what she wants, except for it's a person. And generally speaking, 99 times out of 100, they made the choice for the potential to be there. I'm not talking about rape and incest. I'm talking about people just out there doing their thing. You know what I mean? So just because it's inconvenient for you and you made a bad choice doesn't mean that you get to harm another individual. That's my argument from the libertarian pro-life standpoint. I'm still trying to get caught up here on all this stuff. From North Pole. Rob Myers is from North Pole, not Fairbanks. I know. You know what I mean. I mean, come on. Hello. The country's lost common sense. Was supposed to be an argument. We love Ben Carpenter. Okay, we got to go. Actually, I have a line on hold. I just realized that there's a line on hold. Let's get the Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Okay. One final segment here on the program. And we can lighten it up a little bit, but I do have a phone call before we go to the lighter side of stuff. And they've been on hold for a bit here, so let's go to them first and see what they have to say. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Again, this is Bubba for repeat really quick. I'm from the Rob Myers part of the world.
Rob Myers in North Pole, right.
Really
what's
quick. In North Pole, yes. Really quick, the left has determined that the song Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is politically incorrect. It sponsors bullying. It talks about bullying. Which reindeer was the bully? You know?
Right. Yeah, it was all the other reindeers. They wouldn't let him play reindeer games. I mean, this is a story of overcoming. Rudolph overcomes the bully.
Her name was Olive.
Olive.
Olive, the other reindeer.
Olive.
Used to laugh and call him names.
Olive, the other reindeer. She was a real bully.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Bob.
A real bully.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for calling in. Olive, the other reindeer. She was a brute, man. She was a brute. She beat up on all the boys in the schoolyard. Oh, man, that's hysterical. Thank you for calling in and joining us. All right. I got good news. I mean, there's other stories I could get to, but who cares, right? Who cares right now? We could talk about these. I'm closing windows at this point. Closing windows. I got some good news, but I do have one more call on hold. I'm going to get you here in just a second, caller. Don't go anywhere. I got one call on hold. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back to you. But I had to tell this story because this is hysterical. And I mean, it's interesting. It's good news. 47 years ago, a Minnesota man walked into his local library and took out a book on on foreign auto repair. The book was Chilton's Foreign Car Repair Manual. In 1975, he checked it out from the Lake Elmo location of the Washington County Library. And nearly half a century later, 47 years later, he returns the book with an apology letter and a donation to cover the cost of the book. He returned it anonymously, according to the Memphis local news, thereby avoiding the disapproving glare of any librarians at the front desk. He dropped it in the book return. He dropped it in. Didn't want to face the arched eyebrows of the librarian. 47 years overdue. He included a note and an explanation as to why he had the book for 47 years. He said, in the mid-70s, I was living in Lake Elmo and was working on an old Mercedes-Benz. I took out this book for reference. A few months later, I moved, and apparently the book got packed up in the move. 47 years later, I found it in a trunk with other interesting things from the 70s. It's a little overdue, and I thought you might want it back. My apologies to anyone in Lake Elmo who was working on an old Benz in the last 47 years. I probably can't afford the overdue charge, but I will send you enough for a new book. The librarians contacted were just happy to have the book back and seemed charmed by the gesture. They wrote on the library Facebook page that they no longer charged daily fees, but only a flat replacement fee if the book was lost or damaged. They intended to use the money that he sent to buy a more updated version, as the pages of the return book were yellow, or as yellow as grain mustard, and the pictures were still in black and white. But this is just in case. You know, I thought I had some overdue library books. I remember I had a library book for a year and I lost it, and it was in my house and I found it and I returned it, and they're like, well, your wife already paid the replacement cost. So I kept it. I'm like, I'm keeping this book then. Because I already paid for it. I'll keep it. Thank you. Anyway, some good news for those of you out there who might want to I don't know, just have some good news on what's going on. Let me give you some more good news. Starting later today, I had a problem with the website yesterday, and I couldn't get everything working right. I think I've got it nailed down now. Worked on it last night a little bit. But starting today, you will be able to go over to my website at michaeldukeshow.com, and you'll be able to get signed up for the 5 Days of Christmas promotion from our friends at Satellite West and the Michael Duke Show, and your local radio station, where for every day from starting a week from today, next Thursday, we're going to be giving away a bivvy stick, one bivvy stick per day. Trying to put my glasses back on. One bivvy stick per day for Thursday and Friday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday the following week, my last 3 days of being on the air for the year. We're going to be giving away a bivvy stick that you can take, use. You can give it away to somebody else. If you don't want to use it, you can use it as a gift. Whatever you want to do. We're going to be giving away 5 bivvy sticks. He's got like a $200 retail value, and he's going to give you an option to get a discount on the subscription fees for the bivvy stick as well. There's a subscription fee with a bivvy stick. So you get the hardware, but you got to commit to something. But again, they're as low as like $14 a month to have it in your pocket. I got mine in my pocket all the time. It's actually in my coat pocket downstairs. I was going to bring it into the studio, but I forgot I left it in my coat pocket because I carry it with me all the time. It turns your cell phone into a satellite communications device. You can send text messages, you can do maps, you can do group track, where if a handful of you were all together, let's say you got a bunch of snow machining friends and you're all out snow machining in the White Mountains or at Summit or down in Cantwell or wherever you're snow machining. Everybody's got a bivvy stick in their pocket. Well, guess what? You could pull up your app on your phone and you get separated. You could see where everybody is. You could see group track. You could see where all your friends are if you're part of the group, if you got the group track function turned on, where everybody's grouped up. That's slick. How about hunters? You're out hunting and you get, you go this way, I'll go that way. You want to check to see what's going on? You got it. And you can still send text messages and eat, all that kind of stuff. The bivvy stick is super cool. We're giving away one a day starting a week from today. You're going to have to go out to the website to get signed up to win. So a little bit later this morning, check out the website, michaeldukeshow.com. Look for the Satellite West logo and the 5 days of Christmas verbiage, and we'll get all that squared away. It's going to be a fun time. So you got to get signed up to win. Thank you to our friends over there at Satellite West for sponsoring the program and for helping us out with this promotion. So the 5 days of Christmas from the Michael Duke Show, Satellite West, and this, your local radio station, who also loves to have the show. It's gonna be good stuff. All right, coming up on tomorrow's program, as I said, it will be Jeff Knox and Willie Waffle. No Chris Chang, he's on vacay in South America, and we'll be talking firearms news and goodness and everything else. And we'll be doing 5 bivvy sticks. Somebody in the chat room just said 5 bivvy sticks, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, and a cartridge in a bear tree. Somebody, I don't know how many people have sent me that meme. Have you seen that meme yet this year? And a cartridge in a bear tree. It's a shotgun shell cartridge hanging inside of basically looks like a Charlie Brown bear Christmas tree. And a cartridge in a bear tree. Oh, I'm so ready for Christmas. I'm so ready for the vacation right now. 907-433-3150. We might have time for one more call before we go to break, and we'll see what you guys have to say. Otherwise, we didn't get to this story. I wanted to get to this story, but it's politics. Do I want to U-turn back into politics here in the last 2 minutes? I'll save this story for Monday. Some rural voters were again left uncounted in Alaska's statewide election. It's an article about 6 rural villages that did not get their ballots fully counted in the November elections. Why? Because the post office failed to deliver them to the division of they had until the 30th of November to get there. And it's mail service from a rural village, which is all by airplane. How does it take this is not the first time this has happened. This is not the first time that this has gone on. We're talking about, this is over 200 people, almost 300 people that didn't get their votes counted. This is, I'm going to trust the most important decision I'm going to exercise as an American citizen to the U.S. Post Service. It's like depending on the DMV to keep track of my medical records. Oh, man. It's ugly out there. All right, my friends. Well, I guess that leads us up to the, we'll cover that story on Monday, I guess. How about that? We're going to head out of here, and we will see you guys tomorrow for Firearms Friday. Yeah! All right. Thanks, folks. Appreciate it. Do me a favor. Be kind to one another. Love one another. And live well. The Michael Duke Show. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. All right. Well, all you beautiful people out there, thank you for being part of the show today. Now I'm going to have to make up a 5 bivvy stick. I'm going to have to at least come up with 5 things that I could sing about. That'll be fun. Oh, man. Rudolph and Olive, the other reindeer. All right, my friends. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day. Merry Christmas.
Bye.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.